made that with the washer was awesome. I'll tell you what, man, that's the first time I've ever been confused once, but I didn't know if I was supposed to raise my hand to break out the mosh pit, man. I was doing that. I was fixing to it, nobody else was. So hey, Brother Greg asked me to come up here and share a little bit about my testimony. Anyways, I'm just gonna hit on some high spots because if I speak in churches all the time, it takes a good hour or so. So I'm just gonna hit on a couple of highlights and then tell you how I got involved in prison ministry, and then share a little bit about the program that I work for, and then they'll probably eat up all of my time. But my TDCJ number is 1177-173. I got saved in the penitentiary in 2003. I gave my life to Christ sitting on the cell unit. And I didn't do a lot of time. I just did 1 year and then 10 years on parole. But the way that all this went down, I wasn't saved. I was born and raised in bars. My dad was a bar owner in Amarillo, Texas, so that's a lifestyle that I grew up in. And I wound up marrying a bartender. And I can't say that we had a good marriage because we fought all the time, we drank all the time, and just butted heads. She would get mad and kick me out, and I would go, do whatever. And then 6 months later, we'd get back together. We had this on and off again marriage. It was horrible. And then my dad died of cirrhosis of the liver. And I told my wife, I said, I can't go on like this anymore. All this alcohol's caused every fight we've been in, so we can't live this way anymore after watching my dad die. So we got back together and we changed our lives. We quit working in bars and actually got real jobs, and we didn't get saved, but we started living a lifestyle that wasn't just partying all the time. And I was working in a sign shop, and while I was at work one day, we only had one vehicle, and I had my Harley. And I parked my Harley over at my mother's house because it was supposed to hail and we didn't have a garage. So me and my wife were sharing one car because her car was in the shop. And she went to drop me off at work that morning, and she left. And that was the last time I ever saw her alive. She was supposed to pick me up at noon so we could go to lunch. And noontime rolled around and she never showed back up to get me. And I was getting angry, thinking, man, she's lazy, went back to sleep, and now I'm not going to get to go to lunch. So my boss told me that he'll give me a ride to my Harley. So he gave me a ride to my mother's house, and he just dropped me off, and my mother wasn't home. So now I can't get in to get my Harley, and I'm on foot, and I'm really mad. So I'm just going to walk up to the place that she's working at, and a young lady that was working there, she was shaking and crying when I walked through the door. And I asked her what was wrong, and she told me my house just burned down, and that my wife was inside. And at first I called her a liar, and she said, no, I'm not lying. So I took her car, and I took off across Amarillo, Texas, running red lights. Lucky I didn't kill somebody, run into somebody. And when I got to our house, I had to park about 2 blocks away from all the policemen and the fire trucks and the ambulances. The firemen were still spraying our house. And I got out and I ran around the corner, and all the police turned around and they saw me, and they took me down. And they handcuffed me and took me back and put me on the back of the police car and started asking me questions. They said, who are you, where are you? I said, this is my house, and this is my work. And I said, is there somebody inside? And they said, yeah, there's a young lady inside. I said, what happened? Did she fall asleep with a cigarette? And they said, we don't know. So next thing I know, these 2 detectives walked up and they told the police to leave, and they placed me under arrest for suspicion of murder. And they took me downtown and handcuffed me to a chair from the police station in Amarillo, Texas. And there's children here, so I'm not going to get too graphic. But they came in, I could tell by the line of questioning that something really bad had happened to her. It wasn't an accident. And it was hard. It was hard being handcuffed to that chair, not knowing what happened, just knowing that the wife dead, somebody killed her. And the police are saying, you did it. And eventually my boss shows up, and he told him he was at work. He could not have done this. I mean, there's no way. We've got witnesses that he was at work. He's on video when this happened, the security cameras. He didn't do this. So eventually they had to let me go. And they let me go to a world that I couldn't handle. I told you that I partied my whole life, and I thought life was just about partying and being fun. But whenever it goes from partying to have fun to partying to cover up your hurt, that's when you start self-medicating. And my wife was dead, and I started self-medicating. And they didn't know who did it. It took them a couple of months before they caught the guy that did it. And after they caught him, it was not an ongoing investigation anymore, so they started sharing with me more what happened. This young man was 19 years old. When he was in the youth center, Florida Youth Commission for armed robbery since he was 15. When he turned 18, they let him go, which I'm sure he was still on parole or probation or however that works, but he walked right through that and said, I'm going to hitchhike to California. So this man took off hitchhiking from Florida to California and picked my house in Amarillo, Texas. And in his confession, he said that he was going to break in and steal food, that he went and knocked on the door and nobody answered, so he thought the house was empty. Turns out she was in the shower when he knocked on the door, and I'm a firm believer if she would have answered the door, then he would have said, oh, hey, is John here? And she'd say, you got the wrong house, and he would have left and went somewhere else. But she didn't answer the door, so he goes around to the back of the house and breaks out the window, and he crawls to my house and heard water running. So he was peeking through the door, and there's my wife in there taking a shower, getting ready for work. And he hid in my house for over half an hour, watching her bathe, hiding behind the couch, watching her.
I'm in a meeting, so I get
And when she finally saw him, he was going to rape her, and she fought him. So he beat her until she just laid there, whimpering. She had a broken nose, her eyes were swollen shut, and he tried to do it again. And she still tried to crawl away from him. So this man picks up my belt off the ground, put it around her neck, and choked her to death, and then proceeded to rape her after she was dead. And then he caught my house on fire, trying to cover up his tracks. And I'd been self-medicating for quite a while. I started using drugs, anything that would take that pain away from me. And then they caught this guy, and they had his picture in the Amarillo Globe News. And I saw his picture, and they had him at the Potter County Jail. So my messed up way of thinking, being strung out on drugs and drinking way too much, I decided the only way that I could get on with my life, the only way I could stand up for my wife's honor, was for this man to pay for what he did to her in the same fashion. So I decided that I needed to kill him. I became obsessed with vengeful thinking, and it consumed my whole life. So I wound up, and I'm cutting a whole lot of stuff out, guys, for sake of time, but I wound up getting myself thrown in jail at the Potter County Jail with the intentions of revenge. And when I got there, I shared my story. I didn't tell you guys a fraction of what he did to her. He tortured her. But I told all the guys and myself what he did. And I was going to kill this guy, and now I had backup to get it done. I had them just as angry as I was. And thank God I didn't pull it off, or I'd still be sitting. But I don't know if they found out who I was or read the paper and put two and two together, but I got kicked out of jail. Probably not too many people can say they got kicked out of jail. You know, they came and said, Buchanan, you're out of here. And I said, no, I'm staying here. I don't want to leave. They said, we'll drag you out of here. Drag you out of jail. That's how messed up I was in my thinking because of revenge. So I get out and I get put on probation for 4 years for a felony drug charge. And the man who did this to my wife went to court and he got the death penalty for what he did. And I'll be honest with you, I thought that would make me feel better. It didn't change a thing. It didn't bring anything back. It didn't take my pain away. But I did try to straighten my life up. Because I was on probation now and I thought I can't do this. And I told you guys I had a Harley. My Harley became my painkiller. If I was having a bad day, I'd just ride, you know, get the wind in your hair, let it out. And I came home one day and somebody stole my Harley. I thought, you gotta be kidding me, man. So I'll tell you what, the first thing I did, I relapsed. I went straight back to that self-medication. I started using again. I started failing UAs at probation. I failed like 10 or 12 UAs. I know guys get locked up for failing one.
Yep.
But these people knew what I'd been through. They knew the pain that I'd been through. And they were trying to help me. But I wasn't hearing it. So eventually I got pulled over and picked up another drug charge, which was my second felony, revoked my probation, and they sent me to prison. So I went to a safe P unit. That's the weirdest place ever. It's a prison rehab. But anyways, you have to write an autobiography about your life, explaining, you know, your life, and give it to the counselor so they can evaluate you and know how to deal with you, right? So I wrote this biography, and I went into detail what he did to her. It's sick. And I actually wrote that the state of Texas sentenced this man to death. And I said 5 minutes later, I'll be dead too, so I can follow him to hell and spend my eternity killing him. And I was bent on paper. This is my first day in prison. I said, you want to know my story? And the more I wrote, the madder I got. And the madder I got, the more stupider I got in my writing. But I finished off that testimony with, I'll follow this man to hell and spend my eternity killing. I was bent on paper. And I wrote killing him again and again and again for 3 pages front and back. And I turned that into a counselor. The next day they came up and said, Buchanan to the picket. So I go out there and there's 5 officers and they turn around and you guys have been locked up, you know how it is, getting arrested in prison. You know, this time they put the leather belt with the ring and the hook through it and the chain to my ankles. And I had to walk over to see that sergeant, and it took about 2 hours to get across that farm. But anyways, I walk in there, and she's got that biography. And she looks at me and she says, is everything you wrote true? And I said, yes, ma'am, it is. She said, well, we're a little concerned you may be a threat to the other inmates. And I said, you know what? You put that guy in here that killed my wife, I'm a big threat to him. I said, I'm not a threat to any of these other guys that are doing the time just like I am. So eventually she took my chains off and she said, I want you to see the unit psychologist. Now, the way SAFE-P works, you get a 10-year sentence and you do 1 year in prison and the rest of it on probation. So I go in there, but it's intensified rehab. You have to do AA, you have to do all this stuff and talk about your life with counselors. And I told him I'm not going to do it. I said, I'm not going to talk about my dead wife being raped. I said, I'm not going to do it. I said, put me in regular jail. You know, I'm not going to this rehab jail. So I go see the psychologist, and I tell him my story, and he says, you know what, man? You can't do this program? I said, no, I can't. He goes, then I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to sign this piece of paper, and they're going to come take you to county jail, and you're going to go to the Montford unit in Lubbock, Texas, and you're going to get your whole 10-year sentence, or you can shut up and do this 1 year in prison, the rest of it on probation. I'll tell you what, when you get faced with a choice like that, you're not as crazy as you think you are. You know, 1 year, 10 years, okay, I'll do your program. So I wound up going to this program, but that sergeant says, I want you to see the chaplain. And there's a lot of people that tried to lead me to Christ before I got locked up, and I had so much anger for what happened to my wife. And I would take it out on people that tried to show me the Lord. I remember a man came up to me on the street and he had a tract, and he said, God's there when you need him. And I said, I don't need him, but she did. Where was your God when my wife was getting murdered? And I said, take your little fantasy and get out of my face. That's how I treated people that tried to lead me to the Lord, because of the anger that I had in my heart. Now I'm in prison, and this sergeant said you have to see the chaplain. So I can't throw my little temper tantrum like I usually do. I'm in white, she's in gray, telling me what to do, so I have to do it. So I go in there to this chaplain, and he said, what can I do for you? And I threw that biography on his desk. I said, read this. And he picks it up and moves it to the side of his desk, and he pointed at me. He goes, that's their stuff, pointed at that sergeant. He said, what can I do for you? I said, all right, man, I'll play your little game here. And I looked at the ground and I started telling him the same story I'm telling you guys, but in much more detail. And every third word started with F. I was puking hatred on this chaplain's desk. I never cried. My wife got murdered. I've been through a lot of other things I didn't even talk about, and I never cried because I was one of those men that thought men don't cry. You suck it up. Suck it up and go on with life. Don't be whatever. And you know what, guys? The creator of the universe that hung a billion stars in the sky gave men tear ducts. You know why he did it? Because it's healing. Because when we bottle that stuff up and we hold on to it, we wind up in places like Roach Unit and Cell Unit and Clinic Unit and Neal Unit because we don't know how to live. We don't know how to breathe. We don't know how to let go of all that pain. And I looked at this chaplain and I told him my story and he was crying. And it kind of touched my heart. And he said, can I pray for you? I said, you know what, man? Thanks for listening to me. It felt good to get this off my chest. But I don't have anything for your blanking God. That's what I told the chaplain. And I got up and walked out of his office. Next day, I get a lay-in. If you guys don't know what that is, it's a hall pass in prison. It said, report to the chaplain's office. So I go to the chaplain's office. He talked to me about mercy and grace and free will, and I pray for you. I said, leave me alone, man. No. Next day I get a lay-in, report to the chaplain's office. This man called me every day. You know what? When I looked in the mirror, you know what I saw? I saw a hate-filled, vengeful, drug addict, alcoholic, bad dad. I abandoned my daughter. Her mother got murdered, and I went to prison when she needed me most. And I looked in the mirror and I saw all that hate and that anger and that addiction. When this man looked at me, he saw Christ in me, and he didn't give up on me until he brought that out. That TDCJ chaplain was the biggest example of Jesus Christ on earth that I've ever seen. And I'll tell you what, pray for those men because they have hard jobs.
Yes, I do.
But this man didn't give up on me. And eventually I got saved. I gave my life to Christ. And I changed. Did I get perfect? Absolutely not. You know, you still a sinner? Well, I'm still breathing, you know, but I know now when I have a bad day that I can give it to Jesus Christ, not Jim Beam. I know now when I have a bad day I can give it to my Messiah, not a meth pipe.
Yes.
And he started talking to me about forgiveness. And there's a lot of things I didn't get into, but I had to forgive my dad. I had to forgive my brother. And then this chaplain goes, you need to forgive yourself. I said, man, I can't do it. I can't do it. I said, I've caused so much pain. When this little girl, her mother got murdered, and I chose a meth pipe over her. I said, how can I forgive myself for that? I can't, and in my head, I thought if I forgive myself, then I'll make the same mistakes. And that is the complete opposite of God's truth. But in my mind, that's what I believe. And it was another inmate that helped me forgive myself. This guy looked at me one day and he says, you can't forgive yourself? I said, I've caused too much pain and I just can't do it. He goes, well, do you believe that man's forgiven? Well, if he gets saved and repents and changes his life, absolutely he is. Well, do you believe she's forgiven? Yeah, if she repents and changes her life, gets saved, she is. But you can't forgive yourself. I said, man, I've just done too much. He goes, so what you're doing, you're standing at the foot of the cross, you're looking up at Jesus Christ saying, that man's forgiven, that woman's forgiven, but I can't forgive myself, so apparently you need to come down off that cross and do a couple more miracles so I'll have enough faith to forgive myself. You know what? And I thought, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
You know what? I'll tell you what, anybody in here that's having trouble forgiving yourself for something in your past, think about that tonight when you're laying in bed. You know, Jesus, you didn't do enough for me, or I'd be able to forgive myself. And you know what? He was right. So eventually I forgave myself. And then this chaplain said, you got to forgive the man who murdered your wife. And I said, I'm not going to do it. You want to know what I said to him? I said, Jesus wouldn't even forgive him. I'd only been saved for about 30 seconds. I didn't know any better. But I said that. I said it to a chaplain. And I was wrong.
Yeah.
You know what? I got out of prison and I started going to Trinity and Amarillo and started counseling with them. And eventually I said, you know what? I do need to forgive them. Well, you know why? So I can get on with my life. So that way I don't get angry all the time, but I can let go of this burden and live a glorified life. Because if I hold on to this hatred, that's going to keep me separated from God. You know, what does God say? How can I forgive you when you don't forgive your brother? And you know, it doesn't matter if it's something this small or somebody murdered and raped your wife, you have to forgive. It doesn't mean I'm going to be your buddy. It doesn't mean it's okay what you did. It means I'm not going to carry this load anymore. You know, Jesus said, my yoke is easy and my load is light. And if you're carrying a load like that, you're not walking with Jesus. So I let that go so I could work on my relationship with God. And you know what? I get a phone call one day from the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, and I've forgiven this man. And they said they're fixing to execute him. I usually have this on paper, but you know, I thought, man, do I need to go to this execution? I thought if I've truly forgiven, is it all right for me to condone the state of Texas killing somebody? So I did a lot of praying about it, and I decided to go to this man's execution. But I went with the heart of forgiveness, not a heart of vengeance. And I started praying for him, and I had pastors at my church praying for him. I had my small group praying for him, that he would come to know the Lord before they killed him. Now, I went to his execution, and I'm standing behind the glass, and they got him laid out on the table on the gurney with the leather belts, you know, the IVs coming out of his arm. And he won't look at me. You know, he's got a microphone hanging above his mouth, and I'm over here. And I know he can see me out of the corner of his eye, but he won't look at me. And he's got a warden at his head, and he's got a chaplain at his feet, and the chaplain's praying. The warden said, "Do you have a last statement?" He said, "Yes, sir, I do." The warden says, "Go ahead." He says, "First of all, I want to thank God for the love. Thank God for the love from the family and friends that I have. To God I give the glory through the years. I love and care about the Lord. The Lord knows that I prayed for the victim's family. I know you probably all have bitterness and hate for what I did. There's not a day goes by that I have not prayed for Ronnie Dawn Buchanan and her daughter who was left behind. I pray to God, the Lord Almighty, that like He did for me, He would reach out and help you. I just pray that the Lord takes away your bitterness. There's so much hurt that I've caused you all. On the phone, I talked to my family for 2 hours. It was hard to see such a big man break down and cry like a little baby talking about his dad. I hope this will touch your hearts like you have touched mine. I know it is hard for you all. I am to blame for this, and I will take that, Lord, when I get there. Back in 2003, I want to tell you this. I got down on my knees. The Lord knew my heart. I wanted to kill myself. I spoke to Miss Ronnie Dawn Buchanan. The next day I received a letter that they had lost a friend to suicide. She said that she forgave me and that this was something I needed to hear. God help me to forgive myself and move on. I just pray that someday you will find forgiveness in your heart. Know that your loved one is in a good place. And then he stopped talking. He looked at me dead in the eye and he said, "Can you forgive me?" I didn't have a microphone. All I could do was nod my head, and I nodded my head yes. And then he looked up and said, "I'm ready." And I watched that man go to heaven. And I know in the depths of my heart that I will spend eternity with the man that raped and murdered my wife because of his repentance and my forgiveness and the repentance of my own sin. I mean, I have